Mastering anything in your life takes time. So whether you're starting a new business or starting with crypto, I really do want to focus a little bit on crypto and business because it becomes a craft. It's something that you practice and eventually you get good at it. And the more that you do it, the better that you get at it. If I could go back to my younger self and give one tip, well, besides buying Bitcoin, obviously, but if I could give one really good tip is be kind to yourself and be patient, because I think often I used to want something and I would want it now. And so I'd like work really hard. And then if I wasn't where I wanted to be right now, or I see other people getting where they are faster than me, I would be like, something's wrong with me. What's wrong? Why can't I be where I am? Why are my businesses failing? Why is this happening, right? It wasn't until I had a successful business, an online store, and it wasn't until the first month that I made $50,000 in 1 month that I was like, oh my God, like I've made it. Like that's how I kind of thought. But until that point, it was like really, really, really stressful. And then when it happened, it actually happened quite quickly, but it took all these mistakes and all of this experience to kind of make it happen that quickly. And it took quite a bit of failed businesses to make that happen. So my advice to you is really to be kind to yourself and take your time with things, because you can't compare your chapter 1 to somebody's chapter 20, which is a quote that I heard a long time ago, and it really, really made me think. Like, everything takes time, right? And so when you're learning crypto, people often, they come in and they're like, okay,
how long is it going to take me to learn this? I want to learn it now.
And they're like really, really, really hyped up, and they haven't even finished the course and are already asking like a million questions. And it's like, oh, well, did you see this video or this video? Like, watch it first, take your time. Crypto's not going away. So take your time. Whatever your craft is, you could take your time learning it well, practicing and doing it well. The best things that you could ever do, in my opinion, is take some training, because then you're kind of picking up where the other person left off. Think about like reading a book or taking an online course. You're literally absorbing all the information somebody else already went through, mistakes somebody else already went through. So definitely take some training. Things don't just happen in an instant. So you can't just be where you see the other person is. You can't just be there right away. So with crypto, for example, that's a solid skill. Like, to be able to trade crypto, it's a skill that you're gonna have for life. And it's a skill, like, whenever you need money, you're like, okay, I'll just trade some crypto and you can make money and withdraw it straight into cash. It's like an amazing skill to have. In my opinion, it's better even than business, because it's literally money on demand and you don't have to put in a lot to get back a lot. So I think it's an amazing thing. So if you could master that, you wouldn't just master it in 5 hours. You need like 10,000 hours to become an expert. But you can't just expect yourself to become an expert right away. That's why you practice in a simulated environment. So you put in your 10,000 hours over time. So I've been in cryptocurrency in the space since 2013, which is when I bought my first Bitcoin. But I was actually looking at it since 2012. But looking at it doesn't make me an expert, does it? It's like doing it over and over again and getting better and better and better at it, and just keep trying and trying and trying to improve yourself. So you're improving who you were, you're improving how you're trading. So you're just comparing yourself to yourself. That's what you should be doing. And that's like with anything, with any kind of business that you're starting too. Compare yourself to yourself. Don't compare yourself to others. If you want something bad enough, you'll put in the time and you'll put in the hours that it takes to get it. And if you're not doing that, then maybe you just don't want it bad enough. Maybe you don't really want to do it, but you feel like you're kind of forced to do it. You really need that self-awareness of yourself to realize, okay, well, why am I doing this? Why? What's your why? Because if you don't actually want it and you don't want it bad enough, you're not even going to bother putting in the hours it takes to get good at something. If you ever looked at famous artists like Van Gogh and Da Vinci, and if you've ever been to any of those museums, you'll learn so much more about them. Like, how did they actually get good at what they did? And if you look at their story, they all kind of say whatever they thought, however long they thought that it would take them to get good at it, it actually took longer. Everything took longer than expected. And us looking back at these artists, we're like, wow, that's amazing what they've done. But can you imagine all the time before they made that painting? They put in so much time. So don't try to beat yourself up just because you think, oh, I should be here and I'm not here, so now you're upset about it. Don't worry about it. Just be patient with yourself. You really do need to practice what you're doing. You need to put the time into it. Block out time on your calendar for it. Focus on it and really use that time to just do your craft. And that's the thing. If you want to become a master of your craft, you really do have to put in that time. You have to focus on it. So you really want to ask yourself, how bad do you want this thing? How bad do you want to get good at crypto trading? Because you got to think, if you're going to be a master at this, take your time, go slow, go through the courses, go through the motions, go through the lessons, watch them over and over again, practice in a simulated environment, and then you get better and better and better. And then you're going to start seeing like, holy crap, that's a good entry point. That's a good exit point. Like you're in and out and you're making money like crazy. So I feel like I'm a little bit of an expert at this point, but I do know that there's still more to learn. There's always more to learn. Like I feel like for the rest of my life now, I'm going to be learning. And even though I think like, oh yeah, I think that I got this by now, I don't. There's always, always, always more to learn. And that's why I keep taking lessons and I keep putting in the time. Once you've reached at one point of your career or your craft, you think, I'm successful now, so I can stop. No, you actually never stop learning. And that's something that I actually learned at a very young age when I went to programming school. And they told me, this is an industry that you pretty much never stop learning. It's IT. It's never going to stop. You finish school and it's already new. You already have to learn a new software. You already have to learn a new programming language. It's always going to be continuous learning for the rest of your life. Do you want to do that? And I thought, yeah, I do want to do that because I love learning. So you really need to love learning to become a master of your craft and not just practice. You have to keep learning everything new about it. If you're persistent and you keep going, you're going to put in the time and put in the hours that it takes. And it might not even take a month. It might not even take a year. It might even take 5 or 10 years. So maybe if you're starting a business, you might not be successful the first year, but in 5 years, you're probably going to be doing pretty good as long as you stay consistent and you focus on it and not have 10 different things. Like even Warren Buffett says, if you have goals, take 20 of your goals and like write them all down. So if you want, you could write them all on Post-it notes all over the place and then order them by priority. Take the top 5 that you like and then discard the rest and just focus on 5. And I think, you know what? Take the first one and discard the rest and just focus on one. If you just focus on one of your goals and get really, really good at it, or one of your wants or desires, like what do you want to do? Just focus on the thing that you want and only focus on it. Become obsessed over it. Everything takes more time than you think that it does. So if you become obsessed over the one thing, you'll get really, really good at it. So for example, I've always liked having a lot of different businesses because I'm like, if this doesn't work out, I have something to fall back on because things have been really, really good and then they failed and I'm like, oh, I thought I was like successful now. No, you're broke. So you have to start again. I think that one lesson that I really learned is not to focus on all the things, focus on one thing at a time. So if you're going to focus on one business, get it to a point where it's doing really well and you could hire a team and get it going in a certain way to make it money and like without you. And then you focus on the next business and the next business and your next project. But don't start like 3 businesses at once because you're like, that's a good idea, that's a good idea, and that's a good idea. I'm going to do it all. No, don't do that because you're actually diluting your own energy that you could be focused on one. So for example, last year I started a brand new business and within 7 months it made $1 million in revenue. And that's the fastest I've ever been able to achieve that. So I was pretty happy with that. And yeah, and that came over just focusing on it and only it, like nothing else. If you could set up some automation on your other stuff and just kind of like focus on your one business, that'll be good. Now I'm kind of focused on crypto and I'm not doing that much else. Like I'm focused on crypto. I block out a time to do it. And sometimes I look at it throughout the day because it's my main focus and everything else is secondary. Like going to the gym is secondary. Thing is, right now in our lives, we dibble dabble into so many things. We want so many things, but why not try to get really good at 1 or 2 things? Like start by getting good at one thing. And once you've reached your goal, then it's like, okay, well now you're at like some kind of level of success. You could kind of trickle into other things, but have your one main thing that you're good at. I invite you to also make friends with changes, life changes. Things are going to evolve, they're going to be different. It's not all going to stay the same all the time. Nothing's ever the same. Things go up, they go down, they change. You might move, you might not be in the job that you thought that you wanted to be in. You might not be even living in the country where you thought that you'd be living in. Everything changes, and you got to be able to embrace that change and work with it. I think that even if you think, oh, well, this part of my life I failed, or this part of my life I wasted, or this part of my life I stayed too long and I shouldn't have, I don't think that any of these stages of life are actually wasted or should be looked at as a failure. I think all of those were part of your growth, and all of those were needed. And if you could pull out the lessons, and if you could sit down and journal and really like think about it, like really ask yourself, what did I actually learn from this? And write it down and really think about it and really take the time to do this. You'll become a better person. You'll become a better version of yourself. Like you really, really, really have to actually think about it, because often we go through the day, we go through the motions, and we just do things all day long, and then we don't really like take the time to think about it. And I think that's something to even add to your morning routine, is sit down with a journal in the morning when you first wake up and you have fresh thoughts. And just write down things, like ask yourself things and write them down. And it really helps you process. I really feel like my own journal was definitely part of my success, my own success. I really think that it is, because I almost write everything in my journal, my ideas, my business plans, my to-do list. And like often when I look at part of my life where I wasn't writing as much, I could definitely see like, oh, I was making a lot of mistakes, and I was doing the mistakes over and over again because it was definitely a pattern, and I wasn't understanding, and I didn't get that it was a pattern until when I started to write things down. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like literally boring myself with how much I'm repeating the same mistakes. So that's how you grow. You grow when you're sick of your own mistakes. You know, sometimes painful things happen in our lives. So I had a really good friend of mine who actually passed away, and that was a painful time. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to see anyone. And I almost didn't even want to like talk about it, because it was kind of like, what's the point of life? And I just kind of got into this negative spiral, and I needed actually some help to come out of it. Like I needed to talk to some friends, and I even had to go see like a psychic, because I was just like not in a good mental space at the time. And often it's like, well, I don't want to talk about that part anymore because it's too painful. But what if like we took all those things that happened to us and like carried it with us for the next part of our lives, and like learn from it? Instead of like carrying all the painful parts of it, like just take the good parts and think about all the things that you learned from it. Take that with you and leave the rest behind. So you don't have to like shut off a whole part of your life because you're like, oh, that was too painful, I don't want to look at that. So as difficult as a part of your life is, like even when I thought I was gonna probably go into bankruptcy at one point, I was in so much debt, $150,000 in debt. And I thought, well, I could go into bankruptcy, but I do want to buy a house in the future. So I'm going to try to not go into bankruptcy. So I really thought about it. But that part, it was really, really a painful time. But then I took that and I brought it in to my story. And I'm like, no, you know what? This is going to be part of my story, and I'm going to be successful one day. I'm going to remember this. And as painful as it was, I like changed it all around, and now I grew from it. So I think that you could grow from the painful parts of your life. That's one thing that I learned as well. Instead of rejecting the pain all the time, it's going to come back to you in different ways. So if you like sit with the pain and embrace it and kind of meditate with it and just kind of like feel how it feels to feel that pain, and actually accept it and embrace it, because that's part of you and it's part of your experience on life and it's part of who you are. Every single thing that happens in your life, it's because that's part of your experience on earth. So whenever something keeps happening again and again and again, it's a pattern, it's because you're rejecting it. You're rejecting it and you're not fully embracing and feeling it. You can only start moving away from it once you've accepted that that's part of you, and then you move on. And everything that you literally go through makes for a more interesting you, a more interesting life. And all those experiences that you have, you could connect them all to your business, to whatever your goal is, to whatever your craft is, and you connect it all and it becomes who you are. We're all unique here. And you know what? No one has a perfect life, because if you think about success, it's not one straight line to success. It's like you go and then it's like, and then finally you're successful. It's like there's a whole bunch of ups and downs along the way. How boring would life be if it was just like, okay, you get from point A to point B and nothing crazy happens and now you're successful. It's like, oh, okay, well, that would be kind of boring. So I know that when you're at the beginning of your journey, you just want to get there. But actually, when you look back at the journey, you could actually look back and like, you know, even cry or laugh about it. And there's like so many sections that were like, oh my God, I can't believe we went through that, you know, because as you go through the journey, that's the fun part. Like once you get to your goal, you know what's going to happen? You're going to want a bigger goal. You're going to want a bigger goal and you're going to want like, oh, okay, so I've made 1 million in my business. Well, now I want to make 10, you know? So it's like you're always striving for more, but you can't forget the journey that took you there. You can't forget the ups and downs, and that becomes part of you, part of your story. It's much more interesting that way. And hopefully with my journey and my experiences, I could motivate you and inspire you to be your own amazing person and your own success story. And hopefully you're going to make an impact on the world. Well, I already know that you are. You're already impacting those around you. Everybody's impacting those around you. Even if there's one person around you, you're impacting them somehow with your mood, with your stories, with your experience. Somehow you're affecting people around you. So hopefully I'm affecting you for the best.